Welcome to On the Moneyline, a podcast by MMA Play 365. I'm Newsome and I'm here to break down UFC Vegas 49, which goes down this weekend, headlined by Islam Makhachev versus Bobby Green. Quickly though, just before we do, a quick recap on the Bayes AI. A very similar statistic, similar outcome as what we had last week. You know, it wasn't the worst, but again, it was just a little bit lower than what we're averaging through the testing phase. But there was also a little gem inside that as well. I also went head to head with the Bayes AI with one of my predictions. But again, like last week, I'm going to put out a brand new, completely separate video on our YouTube channel, just recapping that last event at UFC Vegas 48 from that Bayes AI perspective. So make sure you check that out. Straight into this card though, again, headlined by Islam Makhachev versus Bobby Green, a real feel-good moment for Bobby Green. You know, I remember all the way back in the day when he was fighting Dustin Poirier, he was messing around inside the cage and then he got flatlined by him. You know, at that point, I didn't think Bobby Green would really get to where he is right now at all, and I think a lot of people would say the same thing as well. So it's really good to have seen that development, the maturity from Bobby Green, you know, fighting fight after fight, plenty of times every single year, especially throughout lockdown as well. And now he gets rewarded with that main event against Islam Makhachev. And actually, it's really weird because, you know, I've been high on Islam Makhachev for many years now. I've said that he would get into the top 15 when people said he wouldn't. I said he would get into the top 10 when people said he wouldn't. I said he would get into the top 5, which he will. I said he'll get a championship fight, which he will. And I said he'll become a champion, which I still believe he will. So again, proving doubters wrong. Islam Makhachev will be there. He will be a UFC champion, in my opinion. And even though this is Bobby Green's first main event, even though Islam Makhachev is an absolute monster, again, in my opinion, I think Bobby Green's going to be a difficult fight for him because Bobby Green's got good skills everywhere. He's a decent boxer. He's got good speed. He's got good combinations. He's in and out of range really well, an orthodox movement. He's got good wrestling. He can spring right back up to his feet if he is taken down. So when it comes to Bobby Green, he's just a really difficult fighter to beat, and that's key against someone like Makhachev. And somebody posted this on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, saying that Charles Oliveira is an easier fight for Islam Makhachev than Bobby Green. And I kind of agree with that in a way, even though Charles Oliveira is the champion and, you know, a beast in his own right. But Bobby Green's just a difficult fighter to beat. Now, Makhachev, in my opinion, will get it done. He will beat Bobby Green, but it's just not going to be easy. I don't think Makhachev's going to go in there, score takedowns at will at least straight away. I don't think he's going to go in there and choke Bobby Green out or knock him out. I think Bobby Green's durable. There's no quitting Bobby Green. And like I said, he's going to put up a good fight against Makhachev. But ultimately, with this being 5 rounds, the longer the fight goes on, I do think Makhachev's wrestling will start to take priority in the fight. I think he will start to get Bobby Green down. And every time he takes him down, Bobby Green might get back up to his feet every time, but every time he takes him down, I think he'll be able to keep Bobby Green down just a little bit longer each time. And I think for Bobby Green to win this fight, he's got to keep the fight vertical. He's got to keep this fight standing, box Makhachev up. And I just don't think that Bobby Green's going to be able to do that over 5 rounds. I don't think he's going to be able to do that for 3 out of the 5 rounds to be able to win that decision, should it go to a decision, which I do think it will. Like I said, I think Makhachev will be competitive on the feet, even though I do believe Bobby Green might be the slightly better striker, the more awkward striker. But ultimately, I think this fight's going to be won and lost because of the wrestling that Makhachev's going to bring inside the cage. Again, a smaller cage as well, so that distance, Makhachev's not going to have that extra distance to close like he would in a bigger cage. So I think Makhachev's wrestling will start to take over the longer the fight goes on. I'm picking Islam Makhachev to win this fight. Then in the next fight, we've got in the co-main event, Misha Cirkunov versus Wellington Turman. And these two fighters have really been a little bit off form lately. I know Wellington Turman beat Sam Alvey last time out, but he didn't look great, and he hasn't looked great for a couple of fights either. And the same thing for Misha Cirkunov. Obviously, he's dropped down to middleweight now. I think that's actually not a bad move for him because he's going to be bigger and stronger in that division. And against Krzysztof Jotko, it was a split decision, but I do think that Jotko won that fight relatively comfortably. I don't think it should have been a split decision. So with Misha Cirkunov, his striking's okay, but his wrestling and his grappling is really where he shines. And weirdly, that's where Wellington Turman shines as well. So it's going to be a really interesting fight from a stylistic perspective. I think Wellington Turman, for him to get on top of Cirkunov is going to be very, very tough because Cirkunov's going to be bigger, he's going to be stronger. I think Wellington Turman, he's more of a body lock trip takedown kind of guy opposed to shooting him for a single leg or a double leg. So for Turman to take Cirkunov down, he's got to get into the clinch, he's got to tie up with him, he's got to be able to have the strength to take Cirkunov down, and I think Cirkunov's just going to be a little bit stronger, a little bit more physical inside the clinch, and if Turman does close that distance with Cirkunov, I think it's actually going to be Cirkunov that turns Wellington Turman against the cage and takes Turman down. And once Cirkunov gets on top of Turman, although Turman's a legit BJJ black belt himself, so Cirkunov, and I think Cirkunov will be way too heavy on top. I think he'll be too positionally aware on top. I think he'll be able to transition much better on top of Turman and just do the right things to be able to keep Turman down. On the feet striking, I think it's going to be very close, maybe a very slight edge from a technical standpoint to Turman, but I don't see anything drastic in regards to that edge. It maybe just slight edges, but the power, from a power perspective, I think Cirkunov's got more power than Wellington Turman, so he's got the slight edge there. It's going to be really close on the feet, to the point that I do think this fight is going to be won and lost in regards to what happens in the clinch and who has the most control time in top position once the fight hits the mat. And I just think those areas are going to be where Cirkunov does end up coming out on top in this fight. So I'm picking Misha Cirkunov to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Priscila Cachoeira versus Yeon Kim. And this is going to be a fight that, in my opinion, is going to be won and lost on the feet. I really don't see either fighter looking to try and get takedowns here, to try and use topside BJJ to win the fight. I think both fighters are, especially Cachoeira, she's more than happy to stand on the feet, land good strikes, land powerful strikes. She does have power in her hands, you can't take that away from her. Whereas Kim, although she doesn't have as much power, she's definitely more volume-based, accumulation of strikes. And I think that both fighters are going to have the moments. Cachoeira will have her moments, but the problem I've got with Cachoeira is she normally has those moments in every single fight, but she normally comes up short more often than not. And, you know, that's really telling, because she can have those good moments and not win a fight. And because that's happened on numerous occasions, I do think it's something that will continue to be a trend for her in the UFC at this level. Whereas with Yeon Kim, again, even when she's in a difficult fight, she's fought some difficult opponents herself. Alexa Grasso is definitely one that's up there, and she gave a good account of herself in that fight from a striking perspective as well, which is not easy to do with Alexa Grasso. So I think it's going to be a case of Cachoeira starts this fight quite well. I think she's going to land some hard shots on Kim, but Kim's a fighter that can easily rack up over 100 strikes in a 3-round fight. She's got that cardio, she's got that volume, she's got the accumulation of strikes. And I think over 3 rounds, even if it gets close, when you're looking at one fighter winning at least 2 out of those 3 rounds, I think that's more likely to be Kim. So for that reason, I'm going to be picking Yeon Kim to win this fight. Then in the next fight, this is probably my favourite fight on the entire card. We've got Armen Tsarukyan versus Joel Alvarez. And like I said, it's going to be a phenomenal fight. Both fighters predominantly like to fight on the mat. Alvarez definitely more a jiu-jitsu guy. He's got good submissions off his back. He's definitely tricky to deal with. Tsarukyan, more of a wrestler, really good scrambles, good top control. He's got a magnet for that top side grappling as well. So even mid-scramble, if it's looking like he's getting out scrambled, he'll be able to re-wrestle. Again, he's got that magnet top side game where he'll always end up on top. On the feet, Tsarukyan is more of a point scoring type of striker. Will, again, accumulation of strikes, likes to pop out some nice technical boxing, good fundamentals. Whereas Joel Alvarez is big for the division, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens on the scales as well, because he has missed weight in a couple of fights. He's very, very big for this division. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can actually make weight this time. But Joel Alvarez on the feet, definitely more aggressive, definitely more powerful, definitely a more variety of strikes being thrown from kicks to punches. And because he doesn't mind being taken down, he will crash forwards into his opponents, and if they take him down, then he can submit them off his back. However, I do feel that he's hit a level of competition here against Armen Tsarukyan, who I'm really, really high on, and I have been for a while. You know, that debut against Islam Makhachev, you know, I don't think anybody's given Makhachev a fight like Tsarukyan did, and he came in on short notice on his UFC debut and did that. Since then, he's gone from strength to strength. Tsarukyan has, and I do think that if Tsarukyan takes Joel Alvarez down, Alvarez might be dangerous. He's going to throw up submissions, arm bars, triangles, and he might be successful in some moments in trying to lock up those submissions. But Tsarukyan, I don't think he's going to be able to take Tsarukyan out with a submission off his back. I think Tsarukyan's going to be wise to everything that Alvarez is throwing. I think Alvarez will have his moments where it's looking dangerous, but then Tsarukyan will just escape, transition, get a better position. And I do think this fight is going to be won and lost in that wrestling and grappling scenarios. There is going to be striking in this fight for sure, but with Tsarukyan, he's fought good BJJ black belts in the UFC, and he's been able to take them down. He's been able to get top control time and stay safe. I think that's what happens here. Joel Alvarez is an explosive ball of energy on the feet. He's got power, and like I say, he'll throw some wild attacks, and on the ground he's got that puncher's chance just in a submission form. But ultimately, I just don't think that's going to wash against a fighter like Armen Tsarukyan, who I think is going to grow from strength to strength in the UFC, and he's going to get up there in the rankings for sure. I'm picking Armen Tsarukyan to win this fight. And in the next fight, again, this is a fun fight as well. We've got Gregory Rodrigues versus Armen Petrosyan. Now, Rodrigues is a beast. I've said this in previous breakdowns of him. I cashed him last time out as an underdog as well. I love Gregory Rodrigues, good boxing, good jiu-jitsu, a sneaky good wrestling game as well. But against Armen Petrosyan, I think it's going to be a really tough fight for Gregory Rodrigues stylistically. And you look at Petrosyan, in his previous fights, he's fought Russian wrestlers. In fact, in most of his fights outside of the UFC, obviously this is his UFC debut, he's just been taken down constantly because nobody wants to stand with this guy. He's dangerous, he switches stances, he's got good body kicks, he's got good fundamentals with his boxing, straight punches down the middle, he packs power, he's got decent cardio, and because of that, he always gets taken down. But the thing is, he's winning fights. So again, I said it, a few weeks ago, I think it was the first fight card of this year, with a guy like Vyacheslav Borshev, he gets taken down in pretty much every fight, yet he's winning fights. And it's the same thing with Armen Petrosyan here. Petrosyan's been taken down by wrestlers, but he gets back up and he ends up winning fights. With Gregory Rodrigues, I don't think it's going to be a simple fight for Petrosyan, but with Petrosyan, I think he's going to get taken down in this fight. Rodrigues will find the takedowns. The only difference with Rodrigues compared to the opponents that Petrosyan's fought previously is Rodrigues has got legitimate BJJ, whereas these wrestlers that Petrosyan's fought before haven't. So if Rodrigues does get Petrosyan down and gets him settled on his back, it's going to be much more difficult for Petrosyan to get back up to his feet than what it was against previous opponents where they only had wrestling. But the thing is, Petrosyan recognises takedowns really well, and even when he does get sat down very slightly, he's scrambling back up to his feet straight away. And I do worry a little bit about Rodrigues' cardio, and I never thought this was an issue until his last fight, but he did start to tire a little bit against Park last time out. So I think if Rodrigues is getting a few takedowns and Petrosyan standing back up to his feet, I think Rodrigues might start to tire a little bit with that wrestling. And on the feet, although Rodrigues is going to be competitive, I think there's a big gap in skill. I think Petrosyan's more dangerous. I think he's got more volume, and I think he's going to be able to hurt Rodrigues somewhere along the way. But it wouldn't surprise me if Rodrigues did take Petrosyan down and Rodrigues did end up keeping him down for a significant amount of time and finding a submission. But I like the get-up game of Petrosyan. I like the fact that he's used to being taken down and getting back up to his feet. And once he's back up to his feet, I do think he could potentially light Rodrigues up in the striking department. I'm picking Armen Petrosyan to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Ignacio Bahamondes versus Rong. And this is going to be a wild fight, explosive fight. I think it's going to be a fight that's won and lost on the feet. I'd be surprised if there was much wrestling and grappling involved. Bahamondes last time out with a stellar knockout, flush knockout, great kick, and a brilliant win for him. And now he's rightfully favoured in this fight against Rong, who is going to be no easy task. But Ignacio Bahamondes, his stock rose massively after his last time out, and you can see why. His kickboxing is great, switches stance as well, uses kicks really well, mixes everything in with the boxing as well. So he uses a lot of combinations, mixing both those punches and kicks, makes him a little bit more unpredictable. You can't really telegraph the strikes that's coming from Bahamondes either. But Rongju's game, he'll be in the face of his opponents, he's durable, he'll be winging big shots, he'll be looking to take the head off of Bahamondes. But I just think it's going to be a difficult fight for Rongju stylistically, because although he does have that puncher's chance, although he could potentially overwhelm Bahamondes at times, Bahamondes' technical game with his kickboxing is just beautiful to watch. His recognition of danger, being able to back out when things are getting a little bit too heavy inside of that boxing range with exchanges. from a technical standpoint, from a movement, and like I say, just being the better technical, more fundamental striker, I think it's going to cause Rongju a lot of problems, who's going to be constantly trying to crash into that boxing range to land something hard. I think Rongju is going to have his moments for sure, but with him coming forwards hard and aggressively, I do think it's going to give Bahamondes opportunities to land hard shots and to potentially knock Rongju out. And if he doesn't, I do think it's just going to give Bahamondes opportunities to land a significant amount of volume. So whether Bahamondes knocks him out or if he doesn't and it goes to a decision, I think Bahamondes is pretty comfortable wherever this fight goes in regards to that finish or that decision. So I do think it's a fight won and lost on the feet. I do think Bahamondes is the better technical striker. I'm picking Ignacio Bahamondes to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Josiane Nunes versus the newcomer Ramona Pascual. And I think this is going to be a one-way fight. You know, Pascual stepping in on short notice, making a UFC debut. She does have a decent aspect of MMA from that Muay Thai perspective, which I'll talk about. But Josiane Nunes, I think, is just going to be too much for Pascual in this fight. And Pascual, like I said, she's got that Muay Thai game. She likes to get fights in the clinch where she can land knees to the body and to the head. And actually, she's going to have a heightened reach advantage over Nunes. So, you know, normally in that situation where the Muay Thai fighters, the taller fighter, the longer fighter, and they get into these Muay Thai plum clinches with, you know, the clinch around the neck and then landing knees to the body, to the head, that's really advantageous for him. But with Josiane Nunes, she's got that style where she's so small, but she's like a bull when she comes forward, and she'll wing big hooks to the body, and she's super aggressive. I can just see situations where Nunes is coming forward, Pascual's going to really enjoy that because that's going to allow her to get into the clinch. She's going to start throwing knees at Nunes, but then Nunes is just inside. When she's inside of that long clinch from Pascual, she's just going to land crazy amounts of combination shots to the body, to the head. It's going to back Pascual up, and Nunes is just going to be able to put it on her. If Nunes doesn't finish Pascual, then I think that she can definitely win a decision just by sheer volume and aggression and that forward movement, putting Pascual on the back foot. I think it's a difficult debut, and I'm picking Josiane Nunes to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is a fight that's been rebooked, and you can definitely understand why. We've got Terrance McKinney versus Faraz Ziam. And Terrance McKinney is a fighter that, ton of explosion, will come forward. He's got so many finishes early in fights, very early in first rounds as well, whether that be a head kicks, whether that be with his hands. He's a fighter that's just wild, and again, just a ball of energy coming forwards, looking to put it on his opponents and just overwhelm them with that volume, with that aggression and with that power. But the thing is with Faraz Ziam, he's such a good technical striker, a kickboxing background. He's now moved over to Sanford MMA, so he'll be under Henry Hooft. And again, I think that's a good move for him as well, because that's a coach that really matches his style of fighting. And for Terrance McKinney, we just don't know what's going to happen if this fight gets extended. If he comes out fast and hard and can't take Ziam out, what's he going to look like halfway through round 2? What's he going to look like in round 3? I think Ziam is definitely going to have to weather a storm in this fight for sure, because I think McKinney's going to come out hungry, he's going to come out aggressive, excited, and I think he's going to look to try and take Ziam out early. But I don't think he's going to be able to get the early knockout in this fight. I think the fight does get extended. I do think Ziam could potentially drop for round 1. He might pick things up at the end of round 1. But coming into round 2 and round 3, I think we really start to see that technical kickboxing game come out. And I think he takes over the fight the longer it goes on. I'm picking Faraz Ziam to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Jinh Frey versus Hannah Goldy. And this is just a fight where anything could really happen. You know, Jinh Frey is actually a relatively sized favourite in this fight, and I kind of get it because Hannah Goldy's really failed to impress in the grand scheme of things. But Jinh Frey is not exactly a fighter, in my opinion, that's going to come into a fight like this and completely just run through Hannah Goldy, dominate every minute of the fight. I think the fight's going to be close in parts. I think Hannah Goldy's going to have moments in this fight, but I do struggle to put a lot of trust in Hannah Goldy from what I've seen previously. Jinh Frey's more of a veteran. She's had more fights. She looks a little bit more stable and secure when it comes to that trust in regards to will she win, will she lose, will she do anything daft. And I just think that Jinh Frey, again, she's going to put on a bit of a savvy veteran performance in this fight. She's going to slow things down a little bit. She'll be able to mix things up a little bit more than Goldy because she's more well-rounded. She can strike, she can wrestle, she's got decent topside grappling. But I just don't think it's going to be a whitewash in this fight. I don't think that Jinh Frey, like I've already said, is going to come in and just win every minute of every round and completely dominate. Goldy's going to have her moments, but ultimately it's really hard to put a lot of trust in Goldy until we see evidence that she can be trusted, you know, picking her and backing her to win fights. Until we see that, I'm just not convinced at all. So I am picking Jinh Frey to win this fight. And then in the next fight, we've got Alejandro Perez versus Jonathan Martinez. And again, I think this fight is going to be much closer than the betting line suggests. I think Alejandro Perez is, you know, well, he is a big underdog in this fight, nearly a 2-1 underdog. And I think he's not going to look that big of an underdog here. I don't think it's going to be a simple fight for him, but he's got decent boxing, he's got decent movement. I don't think he's a fighter that's washed or on his way out. And he's a difficult fighter to beat, a little bit like what I said with Bobby Green. You know, I feel like you've got to really put someone like Alejandro Perez away to be able to get him out of there easily. Otherwise, he's going to be in your face. He's constantly going to be coming forwards. He's only lost in the UFC to really good guys, to Song and to Cody Stamann. And Jonathan Martinez, again, he's had his moments where he's not looked great, but ultimately is a relatively safe and sound fighter as well. So I think it's going to be a really close fight. I don't think either fighter is going to run away with it, but I'm actually going to side with the underdog in this fight. I think Alejandro Perez could make this fight dirty, ugly, make it close. And if it is a split decision, then he's going to give himself every opportunity to be on that good end of the split decision. And if there is a finish, then again, I don't think that Martinez is the only fighter that can finish this fight. I think that Alejandro Perez could land something on Martinez. I don't think it will happen, but I just don't see a massive finishing upside edge to Jonathan Martinez. I think it's going to be a close, dirty, gritty fight. And for that reason, I'm picking Alejandro Perez to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Ramiz Brahimaj stepping in on short notice against Michael Gilmore. And I actually think this is a really smart move from Ramiz Brahimaj because he didn't look great against Court McGee. Even though he lost the fight, you know, I'm not making excuses for him, but something just didn't seem right with Ramiz Brahimaj in that fight. I'm not quite sure what it was. He just seemed to be on the back foot from the second the fight started, and that's not normally what we see from Brahimaj. I think that he's coming into this fight on short notice. He's helping the UFC save a fight, and he's putting himself in a fight that he's got a really, really good chance of winning. And it's really good for Brahimaj because it ultimately means a quick bounce back win for him. He doesn't have to wait another 3, 4, 5 months to be able to get in the cage again and grab himself a win after a really poor performance against Court McGee. So a really good fight for Brahimaj, a good decision to take it. I think he's better everywhere. He's the better striker, he's the better wrestler, he's definitely the better grappler. And I just think Brahimaj is going to come into this fight, and I think we're going to see a similar performance of what we saw when Brahimaj fought Sasha Palatnikov. I think Brahimaj is going to come in here, he's going to waste no time, get a hold of a single leg or a body lock, he's going to take Gilmore down. I think he's going to roll on him, I think he's going to find a submission and get him out of there. Or if he doesn't find a submission, maybe some ground and pound. But I think that it's a difficult fight for Michael Gilmore stylistically. I think Brahimaj is the more skilled fighter wherever the fight goes anyway. So I'm picking Ramiz Brahimaj to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Victor Altamirano versus Carlos Hernandez, two newcomers in the UFC. And again, I think this is going to be another close fight. I think both fighters have got some positives, but I think both fighters have definitely got room for development, improvement. From Carlos Hernandez's perspective, he very quick inside of range, moving in, sliding back out. He puts things together quite well, but I'm just not reassured that he's going to be able to put in solid performances in the UFC just yet and be able to really take rounds away from an opponent. And if a fight is really tough and he is struggling, just being able to bite down on the mouthpiece and get through it. And I'm not saying that he isn't that fighter or he can't be that fighter. I just haven't seen evidence of it yet when I'm trying to match him up to a UFC level caliber opponent. And luckily for him, the UFC have matched him up with a fighter that's very similar in that respect as well, because with Altamirano, again, I think he's got a lot of work, a lot of room for development to be made, which can be made for sure. He's more of a karate style type of fighter. He doesn't have the best takedown defense. He can get taken down, but he can also pop back up to his feet unless he's settled. But then the thing is, on the flip side with Hernandez has got okay wrestling. He will shoot takedowns, but the takedowns again, they're not very convincing. It's not it doesn't look like he fully commits to them, and I think that's going to be the problem for Hernandez in this fight. I think that he's going to try and take Altamirano down. He might get him down once or twice, or he might get deep in on a takedown, but I don't think Altamirano is just going to be taken down all fight, which I think for Carlos Hernandez to win this fight, I think he does need to be taking Altamirano down more often than not, because when this fight's playing out on the feet, when it's in the striking range, I think Altamirano, with that karate style, with the kicking game, I think he's definitely got advantages striking. I think it's going to be tough for Hernandez to be able to get inside, to be able to take him down and control the fight enough to win those minutes in the rounds and win the rounds to win the fight. I think Altamirano is definitely the more technical striker. I think he's going to land more volume, the more crisp striking, which the judges seem to like as well. Accumulation of volume over 3 rounds. I do think that it's going to be a very, very close fight, and one of these fighters could have leveled up massively since the last time we saw him, but based on what we've seen, I'm picking Victor Altamirano to win this fight. And that's all for this episode of the podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. Once again, thank you for the support, the comments, the subscriptions to the MMA Play 365 YouTube channel, liking the video. Your support is always really much appreciated. And if you want to check out the recap of the Bays AI, that's going to be up on the YouTube channel as well, recapping UFC Vegas 48 from that AI perspective. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again next week.